these playoff rankings, they're really where the sport, all the subject matter and discussion in the sport lies within the CFP. So let's see what they gave us this week in the CFP. Number 1, Georgia. Number 2, Ohio State. Number 3, Michigan. Number 4, TCU. 5 is Tennessee. And 6 is Oregon. Now, I've got some thoughts on teams that aren't in the top 6, but let me start with a quick thought on teams that are in the top 6. And the fact that in my rankings, I actually had Michigan at 2 over Ohio State. Now, the committee says Ohio State at 2, Michigan at 3. And yes, it doesn't matter, but I just wanted to explain on this show the reason for why I put Michigan at number 2, and that is I think they're more consistent. Okay, so while Ohio State might have a higher ceiling, I think Michigan has the higher floor. And what was laid bare for all of us to see over the last couple of weeks is the fact that Ohio State is not playing great football on their offensive line. When you get into a game like they had against Northwestern, when you have to run the ball and they know you have to run the ball, can you still dominate? And that's a one-win Northwestern team that they still should have dominated on the ground, and they didn't. So that's a concern moving forward. I don't have that concern with Michigan. The bottom line is this. Buckeye fans, you are crashing weather sites all over the internet, refreshing your weather site to see what the weather is going to be like on November 26th. Michigan fans don't have to do that. It's for that consistency that I moved the Wolverines up to number 2. All right, speaking of my number 2 point on these rankings, let's see and talk about what happened below these top 6, because UCLA lands at 12, USC lands at 8. Make it make sense, committee. Please. Because I feel like I'm taking crazy pills, to take a line from Mugatu. UCLA has a better resume and is right now statistically, I would call it a better team than USC. So how in the world does the committee justify putting UCLA 4 spots behind USC? Now, maybe the Bruins don't care about this because all it does is it overrates USC a little bit, which they will have the ability to beat that team, and maybe they would get a little bit more of a bump towards the back end of the season. But if you're just looking at this from the perspective of an analyst like myself, you look at it and you're like, hold on. UCLA has 2 wins against CFP-ranked opponents, Utah and Washington. Their lone loss is a better loss than the loss USC took. USC lost to a 2-loss Utah team on the road. UCLA lost to a 1-loss Oregon team, which this CFP committee thinks is a top 16, or excuse me, top 6 team. I don't know why I can't speak. So they have a better loss and 2 better wins, and statistically, they're probably a better team. Even when you look at the stat sheet, you see that USC is struggling on defense. In the last 3 games, USC has given up 524 yards per game and 38 points. They're right now 109th in yards per play defense. I think UCLA is better, and I think that they should be rated higher. Committee, make it make sense, and please don't discount wins because wins should matter. They're the currency of college football. Third point, I think peer pressure works. Not just because it was effective on me as a high schooler. No, it's also because clearly the committee were listening to those of us, like yours truly, that were saying last week, why in the world was TCU ranked behind Alabama, behind Clemson specifically? And all of a sudden, with the exact same scenario that they were faced with a week ago, a 1-loss SEC team in Alabama, and they ranked them ahead of TCU. What did they use for their reasoning? Well, TCU was behind in some games and had to come back. So now all of a sudden you have a 1-loss Tennessee team that probably has a better resume than Alabama did a week ago, and the TCU team that was still down in moments against Texas Tech. So again, the exact same situation. What changed? Peer pressure. We did it, folks. We got them. All right? And I will, by the way, be pleased to tell you that this is not peer pressure to like do something that they shouldn't do, which is the way most peer pressure works, in particular when you're a teenager. You know what I mean? No. This is peer pressure in the right direction. So good on the committee for at least evaluating and seeing the mistake that they made a week ago and correcting that this week. All right, fourth thought on these CFP rankings. I don't see a legitimate path for the ACC, and the reason is because of Notre Dame. What does Notre Dame have to do with the ACC, Joel? Well, let me tell you. Notre Dame is not a great football team this year. They've gotten better. Their offensive line is playing remarkably well. They're a one-dimensional offense that throws the ball at a clip of, 115th in the country? And yet they were able to handle Clemson this last week in their home stadium. Notre Dame has not completed over 52% of their passes in any of their last 4 games. They're one-dimensional, and they beat Clemson. But it's not just Clemson. In fact, when you look at Notre Dame over the course of the season, here's what you see. Against everybody outside the ACC, they are 3-3 with losses to Stanford and Marshall at home, and their lone Power 5 win against Cal. Then it's a picture of what they did against the ACC. They're 3-0 against the ACC with wins over Clemson, North Carolina at North Carolina, and Syracuse at Syracuse. Those are 3 of the teams that are in the top half or third of the ACC currently, including the 2 teams that are likely to play for the ACC championship game. I don't see a path in which the ACC champion deserves a spot in the college football playoff. Why? Notre Dame. That's all you got to say. The Irish, everybody. 5th and last point on these playoff rankings, I want to extend an olive branch and just tell you, hey, committee, I get it. Your job is incredibly difficult. Dare I say, impossible. Why? Because you don't have a set of concrete criteria. And until you do, and until we have more committees and an expanded playoff where we can actually reward teams for playing on the field, all we have right now is a failed experiment in the committee room and a subjective 4-team invitational. So this thing needs to expand in the committee room and on the field as quick as possible. Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoy that clip, make sure you click subscribe somewhere down here. From game highlights to exclusive interviews and rankings, we've got everything you need as a college football fan right here, College Football on Fox.